Okay, welcome back. So we're going to do just one more short video here before we get into some bigger topics, but it's an important one. We're going to deal with whitespace in C++ and comments. All right, so we're going to start with whitespace. The most important thing to know in C++ is that whitespace is almost completely ignored. Okay, and by whitespace, what I mean is I'm talking about new lines. So when you put extra new lines between all of your commands, we're talking about tabs, for how far you indent your code. We're talking about spaces that you put in between different operators that you write. And so in C++, these whitespace is just completely ignored by the compiler. The compiler just doesn't care, and you can do anything you want. You can arrange your code in any way that you want. However, the problem is that I'm kind of like Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park. Just because you can do anything with whitespace in C++ doesn't mean that you should do anything with whitespace in C++. Okay. And this leads to, before we really get into a lot of the big programming concepts, I want to cover this one. There is an extremely important rule when you are programming, and I'm going to write it big enough to see it. Keep your code clean. Okay, this is so important because you need to be able to read your code. Just because you can position your code anywhere in the file you want to doesn't mean you should. There are certain rules that you should follow when you're writing C++ code, and if you follow them, you're going to find that learning C++ is easier because you're not going to find yourself struggling with things that would be easy to see if you kept your code clean. I cannot say this loudly enough. Keep your code clean. It will make it easier to learn. It will make it easier to write. It will make it easier to read. Keep your code clean. All right. So I'm going to have 3 rules for keeping your code clean. There are different rules that you can use. There are different coding styles you can use. I'm going to cover one of them, just because you'll find out there other people using different ones, and doesn't mean the other ones are wrong. It's just I'm going to pick one and stick with it for these videos. There's no point confusing you with multiple ways of keeping your code clean. Okay, so 3 rules that I'm going to follow here. Rule number 1, line up matching curly braces. Okay, curly braces are those ones that kind of look like this. There's an opening and a closing one. And when you have, we've already used them in our previous code. Inside the main function where we were writing our code, it was wrapped by a curly brace, or a set of curly braces. Okay, and so whenever you write curly braces, you should always have them line up. The opening one should be on its own line, and the closing one should be straight below it. You should not have any variation in your indentation. Okay, the idea, what you do not want to see is you do not want to see a change, either like this or like this. Well, that's a crummy curly brace, but we'll call it good. All right, you do not want to see either one of these. You always, 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 always want there to be able to draw a straight line straight down from every opening brace to its corresponding closing brace. Okay, that's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is indent all code blocks evenly. All right. When you have this curly brace open and closed, that's called a block of code. You should indent it evenly and keep everything even inside of it. All right. So if I have an opening curly brace here, I'm really not doing good with the curly braces. Yeah. Okay, so if I have, command number 1, command 2, command 3. All right. You'll notice that when I do these, there is an indent. This can either be with spaces or a tab character, but you will notice that they're all the same level of indentation. Okay. If I introduce a new block of code, which we will do frequently, I will have that curly brace be the same level of indentation, but then all of the commands inside of it will be indented further. Command 4, command 5, command 6. All right, so what you will see here is you will see that everything is indented the same except for when I opened a new block of code with another set of curly braces, and that one got indented further. But all of the commands that were in it were indented the same amount. This is really, really important because it is going to make it easier for you to read your code, and it's going to make it easier for you to understand which curly braces match up with which. Okay. You will notice also, if I get rid of the highlights here, you will notice also that I followed the rule that each closing curly brace is exactly below its opening one. Okay, so I do not have a difficult time knowing where does this curly brace, where does this block of code end. I just look straight down until I find the first closing brace. All right, these two rules, there is never, ever, ever a reason you should break them. Okay, especially when you are learning how to code, there's no reason you should do it any other way. There's no reason, no excuse for breaking this rule. Okay, always, 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 always follow this rule, and your code will be a lot easier to understand. You will make a lot fewer silly mistakes. All right, and the third rule that I'm going to put here is I'm going to say comment your code. Okay, so the thing about coding is that it's a lot of time not obvious what the programmer was trying to do when they originally wrote the code. So the solution to this is comments, and they're like notes you can put in the code. Okay, the compiler completely ignores comments. You can put anything inside one, and what people will use these comments for is they will describe what the code was trying to do when they wrote it. All right, they will describe different behaviors of the code. They will justify why code has to be there. They are just notes that are put in the code to make it easier to understand. Okay, so there are two types of comments. There's single line and there's multi-line. It's really straightforward and simple. Single line comments are just denoted by 2 forward slashes. Okay, and when you do 2 forward slashes, everything to the right of those 2 forward slashes for the rest of the line is completely ignored by the compiler. Okay, so what you'll have a lot of times people will do is they'll put some sort of command that does something not intuitive, and then after that command they'll put // and then some explanation. Okay, and the other common thing that people will do is they'll just start, if they just have a one-line comment that they want to put in, they'll just start a line with a // and just say this does something. Okay, super simple stuff. A multi-line comment is also very simple. What a multi-line comment does is it starts with a / and then a star character. Okay, this one is the one that on most keyboards is above the 8. It's a little asterisk, and we're just going to do a / asterisk, and then everything after this until we close the comment is going to be a comment, and we close it using an asterisk followed by a /. Okay, so when you put these two in your code, everything that falls in between them is completely ignored by the compiler. All right, so let's go ahead and just take a quick look and see what that looks like. All right, so here I've already put together a program. So I have main. You can see this little opening curly brace and closing curly brace. They line up perfectly. All right, and we can see that all I've done here is I just put out some cout commands. Okay, the first one, this line will print out, of course. This is just like all the other cout commands that we've had. But then we have the second one. This one will not print out because I have put it inside a comment. I started the line with a //, therefore everything to the right of the / is completely ignored for the rest of the line. Even code is ignored. The compiler just doesn't look at it. So the next line, you can say this code will still run because it's not within a comment, but then after the line, I put a / and then you can see, boom, all of this, everything after this / is ignored. Okay. You can see a multi-line comment here. I open it with a /*. There are 3 lines inside of it, completely ignored, closed by a */. And just to emphasize that you can put anything you want in comments, I open another multi-line comment with /*, and I can say I can put absolutely anything inside comments, including a Shakespearean soliloquy, which I have decided to do. And the compiler simply will not care that I have done that because it ignores the comment. I can run it, Control F5 to run, build, and you can see compiler completely ignored all the garbage that we put inside our comments. All it did were the 2 lines that were not commented out. This line will print out, and this code will still run. Everything else completely ignored. As you are writing your code, you should absolutely comment it, particularly when you are doing something strange. If you are doing something that would not be obvious why you have to do it, put a comment. Okay. If you want to be able to remember why you did certain things that you did, put comments. Whenever you write a function, put comments to describe what the function does. Okay. They are important. They help read code later. You should use them. And I think that's about it for this video. The next video, we're going to dive into some deeper stuff. We're going to talk about variables. And until then.